As humans, we want to impress people that we admire or find impressive. The problem is that our modern view of bragging is basically narcissism, where one person acts like a gift to the world and hopes that the other agrees. It really requires more finesse and a little something that can stick with these people even after they've met 100 more. Welcome to the Just Dumb Enough podcast, a show that acknowledges no one is always an expert by dispelling misconceptions with real experts. I'm your host as always, Colton Petrie. My guest today is Dr. Winifred Bragg. Dr. Bragg has over 25 years of experience in pain management, and she knows that there is no pain more universal than a lack of self-confidence and self-value. In response to these pains and many more, Winifred has written 5 best-selling books and joins us today to explain the low to no pain path you can take towards bragging yourself to a fruitful future. Let's brag without being total jerks. Welcome to the show, Dr. Winifred Bragg.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit for the audience?
Thank you. I'm Dr. Winifred Bragg. I'm a physician, pain management doctor. So I provide patients with non-surgical treatments for back and neck and orthopedic problems. I've been a doctor for more than 25 years. I am a 5-time best-selling author and the creator of the Bragg Factor. And the Bragg Factor is obviously my name, Bragg, B-R-A-G-G. It's a 5-step system that teaches people how to own and communicate their value. And so I've written a best-selling book on how to create your Bragg book. And so for those who are wondering about Bragg, I think that they need to know upfront, Bragg is a 5-letter word, B-R-A-G-G. And that second G stands for gratitude.
Fantastic. I mean, obviously 5-time best-selling author. Congratulations. That's very impressive.
Thank you.
What kind of got you to transition from obviously working medical field, then into author, and then into like this topic about bragging?
Well, what got me into that, I've been a pain doctor for over 25 years, treating people who have pain with back and neck and shoulder pain. And what I've learned over the years is that people suffer from not only physical pain, but people suffer from the pain of lack of self-confidence and the lack of owning their value. And this would come across when I was treating patients over the years. I noted that central theme. So I started realizing that pain is pain. It doesn't matter whether it's physical pain or pain because you don't have self-confidence or pain because you can't talk about yourself and don't know your value. Because when you have pain, if your back hurts, what happens? You don't want to move. Oh, my back hurts. I don't want to move. But if you're stuck in your career, you don't want to move. If you're in a bad relationship, you're scared to try another. So I learned that. So I transitioned people from their pain, whether it's physical pain or the pain of not being able to talk about themselves. And so since my last name was Bragg, people always said, you need to do some of that last name, Bragg. I used to have the Bragg process. And I realized people didn't like that. And so I changed to the Bragg Factor. And that's what got me to be able to teach people when they had back pain and they said, oh, I lost my good job, that you still have value and that the value starts with you. And that's what got me to transition into that. Long answer for that, wasn't it?
No, it was a great answer for that. And it really is like that self-value. If we just said like, how much do you put your value forward instead of like, how much do you brag about yourself? People would probably be much more willing to do it. But because we have like some weird negative connotation where we're like, oh, the only way I've ever heard it said is that guy brags all the time.
Right. Yeah, and people, that's right. You said they put it in a negative connotation because people said you brag all the time. And so that's why I tell them, I teach people how to brag from a standpoint, but sprinkle a little gratitude in it. For instance, you might have raised $1 million for some charitable organization, and people may say that you were bragging. But then if you say, I raised that and it was able to help kids go to school, it was able to help cancer patients. See how it softens a little bit? You still brag that you raised that $1 million. But yeah, but it's the value, like you say, it's a value scale. But I can tell you this. I don't know where you've worked before, but how many times has the boss come by your desk and said, Hey, let me give you a raise? If you don't show your value, that's not the way it happens. So you'll be sitting at that desk and never get that raise because you don't say what your value is.
Yeah, I've certainly talked to a lot of people who've said, like, well, I didn't get a very good raise. And part of that is like, well, how much did you sell yourself to your boss? Like, how much did you do last year? What did you say in defense of you needing a raise?
That's exactly right. What did you say? And you have to learn how to say things where it's memorable, where it sticks, because the boss has a lot of people there that may be doing your position. And you have to understand what is the boss's game, what does he really want, and how you helped him to achieve that goal. So it goes back to what you said on that value scale. What was your value in helping that company achieve their goals? And when you can articulate that, he says, yes, because people like a problem solver. Right.
And by that measure, it kind of seems like people do very little to upsell themselves.
Right. They do little to upsell yourself. Well, what I find is the ones who I own my own company as well. And what I find is that the people that do nothing, they love to upsell. It's the people that's doing the things that do little to upsell themselves. Right.
What is that like? Because they don't do anything, they have to think of ways to make themselves, I don't know, feel better or seem better versus the guy who's like, I'm working constantly. I don't have the energy to come up with an upsell.
Right, right. They're just puffing it up and they are just making it better than it is. That's what those people are doing. But the people that really have something that's problem solving, doing their value, doing what they need to do, show value to the company, and they need to be able to articulate it. So when they do a performance review, it helps you. It helps you with your resume. It helps you with when you're networking because people think, oh, I'm going to a networking event today. I'm having wine and cheese. Well, it's really not about the wine and the cheese. It's about who did you meet and did you say something that could resonate. So one of the things with bragging, I teach people they need to have what I call that 30-second brag. Now, how did I come up with that, you might ask?
I might ask
You
because
might ask.
it sounds like the elevator pitch that we hear for like sales topics, but
It,
about yourself.
it is, exactly. In the other world, they would call it a sales pitch. But my name is Bragg, so what I call it, your 30-second brag. And you need to be able to have something that you can say about yourself in 30 seconds that's conversational, that people can remember and remember about you. And so, how did I come up with that? I came up with that because you see, I had to build my own practice. And in doing my own practice, I came to a town where I didn't know anyone. And yet I had $100,000 of school loans. And my father said to me, now listen, we helped you with college, but you got to take care of these school loans yourself. So I would go to networking events and tell people, hi, I'm Dr. Bragg. And they said, nice to meet you. And they'd go on. And I would come home with no referrals. And it didn't go well because medical school didn't teach me about marketing and that kind of thing. So I had to learn how could I distinguish myself from the other doctors in the room so they could remember me. So I started practicing this thing called 30-second bragger. And later I said, well, basically you're bragging on yourself. And now, after 25 years, I've been able to treat more than 20,000 patients. And I did that from learning that. So when I wrote my first book, it was on back pain, secrets to maintain a healthy back. I wanted an endorsement from Jack Canfield. He's the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. You know, he sold over 500 million copies. And I had learned he had back pain. I said, if I can get him to endorse, that can help me. Well, you know, they have gatekeepers at that kind of thing. They don't just let anybody call them up. But I did my 30-second brag to her, and she says, oh, I think Jack might benefit. I said, I'd like to send him a copy, see if it helps. And he gave me an endorsement. And so I want you to know that if you learn that little 30-second brag in a value speech that you talk about, it can help you. And that's what I want your audience to know. That forget about that mental block that you have. You're bragging on yourself. Do what you said, Mr. Perry, and say, no, I'm just giving my value statement.
So how do you start to formulate that? Obviously, you're like, I need my name and then like an accomplishment. What do we tag into that like 30 seconds? What's really important?
Well, I have it like with 3 steps. You do need to know your name and what you do. I'm blank. I'm a computer salesperson. I've done it for 20 years. And if you can say how it helps others. So I am blank, Susie May. I'm a computer salesman and I've done it for 25 years. And what I've learned that the way I do it, it has helped companies to reach their goals because I sell them computers, I give them good support, and so they don't have all these technical problems. And then you want to say, and what? That's something that you can brag about. What is your unique accomplishment with that? So as a result, I have won Salesperson of the Year 5 times. So who you are, what you do, and what is a unique statement that they can remember about you. And you practice that. And, a lot of people go on LinkedIn, they go on Facebook, and they have all these people, and you do it to them, and they can help you get it down smooth.
Well, and this seems to like really revolve around, I think, people being afraid of some of this. They're afraid to approach strangers. They're afraid to like say their accomplishments. And that discomfort really, I think, sets people back, right? Because you could line it out just like that. I have my statement. Don't say it like a robot to people because that'll freak people out. But you have a statement. You don't have to be afraid of talking to these people.
Well, what you do is what I tell people. There are 4 strategies that you can use to promote yourself to kind of help you get over that fear. 4 strategies that you can use kind of to promote yourself. And one of the things you can do to get over that shyness is take a bragging buddy with you. So, for instance, you need to get some referrals or meet people, but you feel a little shy. So why not take me to that networking thing to be with you? You've told me your 30-second brag, what the good things about you. And so when we meet people, I introduce you. I said, this is Mr. Perry. He's had a podcast since 2021. He has 10,000, 100,000 listeners, and people like his podcast because they say it's relatable. See how I said that about you? And you just say, yeah, yeah. And after you hear how the people respond, you're like, I can do that. And so then by the same token, I would have told you things about me. So as we meet different strangers, you say, this is my friend Winifred Bragg. She's a physician. She's written a book. She has a book on how to create your brag book for a competitive job market. And, say about me. And so then I say, oh, that responded nicely. So by the next time you go to networking thing, you may do half and half. Half you do yourself, half with the person. So what do you think about that technique?
I mean, that seems it would build a base of confidence around you where you're like, hey, I just heard, even though they're my friend and I told them to do this, like they said something that was really encouraging and the other person reacted positively. And now I'm operating, with some confidence going into this.
That's exactly what it does. It's going to boost your confidence. And when you hear how it lands on other people, you're going to like, wow, those people then turn to me and start asking other questions. Well, tell me more about your podcast if I just did it with you. Who have you had on your show? How long you've been doing it? And you know what? I may like to be a podcast guest, or I may like to have you on mine. When you see that people start asking you questions, you're like, wow, that 30-second brag did it. And it's doing exactly what you said. It's going to take you from being shy to you're going to feel good about it and get some confidence. And then, because then you're going to get confidence. It's all about getting the confidence. And that's really what the brag factor does, the system that I created. It helps people to gain self-confidence and understand and be able to articulate their value. Because so many people have a problem saying good things about themselves because the truth is some people don't know good things about themselves. And so I have people to write down what are their strengths. And people say, well, I don't know. Well, then you may go back again to those LinkedIn friends or those Facebook friends. Don't ask your family members. You're not going to get good stuff from them. But anyway, ask your friends or whatever, what do you think of my good strengths? And they may not know. And then you think about, what do people come to me for all the time? You may be in another field, but yet you notice every time somebody wants to go to an affair, they come to you and say, does this shirt go with this tie? Well, that person has a natural thing for colors and coordination. Or you may be having a party and you always go, somebody always comes to you, what do you think I should serve? Then you find out, not about the serving, but you are a good organizer, that you are a good person to process things. Just think about what people come to you. Because one of the things in the brag factor, the G, one of the first G stands for what is your gift? And a lot of people don't realize outside of their job, they have natural gifts. So that's how you get it. What are your friends telling you about? What are they coming to you for? Sometimes, you may be a barber or a hairstylist, and, they are nothing but a psychiatrist. While you're sitting in that chair, people tell the hairdresser and the barber all type of problems. So literally, they are unlicensed psychiatrists.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I was just thinking about talking with my hairstylist last time I was in, and I was like, oh, yeah, actually, we talk about all kinds of stuff, and she must do that all day, every day with all kinds of people.
With all kinds of people. And so that's how you kind of learn things about you that you can put into your brag factor that you didn't even know about. But I think getting back to the point is having that bragging buddy is going to help you. Another thing you may do is make promoting and supporting yourself a priority. Rather than putting it at the bottom of the list, put that as a top of mind that you're going to think about opportunities when you could say something good about just a little tidbit so you can kind of practice that self. Sometimes I tell people to convert themselves to a product. People have no problem saying that, I recently bought this bike, this mountain bike, and it's a 10 speed. It does this, it does that. They have no problem tooting their horn about other people's products. So what about make yourself a product? For instance, if you're an accountant, a lawyer, a realtor, and you can't say good things about yourself, then just talk about the product that you give. I have an estate plan. If you're a lawyer, I have a good estate plan that people have found that it was very beneficial when their loved ones moved on because I had all the everything in one spot for them and it was right at their fingertips. Or if you're an accountant, rather than saying, oh, I have all these big network clients, you may say, I have a package that I give people that makes it easier, a brochure where they put down their taxes and expenses. So make yourself a product. And above all, stop using the word just and only.
Yes, I saw that in your book where you're like, just and only should be eliminated from your vocabulary. You're like, and you gave excellent examples where you're like, this makes the sentence weaker. All it does is make your brag into a weakness for some reason.
It does. I had a young lady who came to me in a seminar, and she had said that one of her things that she had done and she was proud of, she had raised $10,000 for a charity. But when she had introduced it to the group, she says, well, the only thing I've done, I just raised 10,000. Just. I'm like, just? How many of us have only raised $2? And she had raised $10,000. I said, now eliminate just from that and give it power. And so over time, I coached her. I do coaching. I'm a high performance coach as well. And I coached her and she eliminated just. And that young woman now has her own business doing marketing because she was a graphic designer. So she makes websites and that kind of things for people. And so she says, got rid of just. Now you could say only, I'm the only salesman who was able to win $100,000, but in that way, but not just, I just raised that. I just managed 50 people. I just did that. I just made an A in a class. I just finished my apprenticeship as a plumber or electrician. I'm just a journeyman electrician. Take the just away.
Well, and that's the one I think that really got me is that was like, I only managed 50 people. I'm like, how many people have managed one person? I mean,
Right,
maybe as a parent, you can say, like, I managed one person. But
right.
even though, like, I managed is a good sentence on its own, you don't need the only in there at all because I managed 50 people is a big statement versus like I only managed 50 people for some reason feels unimpressive, even though it's the exact same thing.
It is unimpressive. It's like that water you're drinking there. It dilutes it. It dilutes it when you put that just. It makes then the other people say, well, she said just 50. And so for the people who don't realize how many people should be managing, if you say just, then it makes it seem like other people are doing 500. And yet other people may not be doing but two. But you said just.
Well, and that kind of seems like you need this bragging buddy in the same or an adjacent, some kind of connected field. Like you and me could go to an event and we'd be like, I'm talking and I'm like, yeah, I am a top 5 podcaster and I have lots of guests. And they're like, oh, well, tell me about your guests. I'm like, well, my friend over here, Winifred's a 5-time best-selling author. And then you like cut to you over there and you're like, yeah, I'm a 5-time best-selling author. And they're like, oh, have you done much publicity? And you're like, well, I was on a show with my good friend right over there. That connection really like helps to build both your own credibility as well as the other person's.
It does. It does. And the people would never know that you had kind of gotten that together before you got there. I tell people, if you can, now with all the security and everything, sometimes you don't know who's going to be at that event that you're going to, so you can't prepare what their needs are. But if you know it's going to be a group of podcasters, at least that tells you something about what the group is. But just like you did that exchange with my friend Winifred, my friend who has the top 5 podcasts, you see how nice that went? And we would have worked that room and no one would have ever known that we came as bragging buddies.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, we happen to show up to the same event. It's crazy, but this person right over there, you should really talk to them.
Right. And so by the time you do that 4 or 5 times, you can put your bragging buddy stay in the bathroom. I got this one.
Yeah. Well, and this all kind of circles back to like getting more comfortable with this. Speaking to strangers, obviously, the bragging buddy helps. But like you said, you kind of have to learn to do this in a small way every day. And I feel like that's, for some reason, the most challenging with people you already know really well, where you're like, oh, this is someone I've had in my life for 30 years. It's hard to come up with something on the top of your head that's going to be impressive to them because they know everything about you. And yet, like, they should be your target audience.
Right, they should be. But you'll be surprised. Like my best friend that I went to college with, I will tell her about when my brag, my 30-second brag and things, and she has no problem saying, oh no, I don't like that. You'll be surprised that when you go and tell her, now this is serious. I want you to be serious about this. And you'll be surprised the feedback they can give you. And just try it. I tell them, why don't you give me your 30-second brag? I want to help you. So why don't you tell your friend, I want to help you. You said you wanted a promotion in your company. I want to help you. Do your 30-second brag to me. So start out helping them and then do yours and see what happens.
Those are the people that'll be really, really honest with you. Like when I first
Right.
started the show, I was like, hey, what do you think about this as a trailer to 2 of my best friends? And they're like, it's bad. And I'm like, oh, like how bad? It's really bad. Like you should redo the entire thing. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to redo the entire thing. And I did. And I'm very happy with my trailer now, but it's like a
Right.
very different process where I'm like, oh, so I should add some music because just me talking is kind of dull for a trailer. They're like,
Right.
yeah. And I'm like, well, should I add some other people? And they're like, well, yes, add other people in context to support your statement. Give a person you had on that said something nice, you know? Like it's not that hard. Just find one of those and then clip that into the piece.
I have a YouTube station called The Bragg Factor where I give people tips for a terrific Tuesday to help motivate people. It works for business people, entrepreneurs, and college students as well. And when I first started doing that YouTube, my best friend again said, listen, you need to cut it short. That last video you did was good information, but too long. I said, what? I wanted to listen to you going to work. It was too long. Cut it short. So yeah, they will tell you. And I tell people, that it was John Rawls who says, we are all the sum total of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So you need to evaluate who's in your circle. And those need to be some people that you can trust, that you have confidence in, that Like you said, the friend that told you about the trailer. You don't want a friend that agrees with everything that you say, because then that's a superficial relationship. You need someone that's going to tell you the hard facts and tell you those things that you didn't want to admit to yourself or see yourself. So if your circle is never giving you any kind of good feedback, then you have to examine and say, I need to kind of prune my circle and get some other people in that close knit, tight circle of yours. And every now and then we have to weed our circle. Like, I'm not telling you get rid of your friends, but put them in that secondary circle. But that five core, you need some hard nosed people. We know that feedback is what we call the breakfast of champions. And you want people that can give you some critical feedback in that circle. So they did a good job to tell you about the music and all that, because just you talking, you wouldn't be a top five podcaster, they might say. And I'm sure they took credit for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're like, see how much better we made you?
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So when they're there, you don't even know. They're going around rooms saying how they made you a top five podcaster, and you don't even know it.
Well, it's one of those that like you could do this in the opposite way. Instead of looking at your top five people and saying like, oh, these are the five closest to me, you could say like, well, who are the five that I would want to be, like I'd want to emulate those people, and then
Right.
put those people close to you. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to like shove your other friends out. It just means you bring these other people closer. And it might be like, well, I spend 2 hours with this one person and only one with another. But if I swap those a little bit, like if I just increase the other one, like they naturally become part of my five. Like, and that helps me to emulate them more.
That's exactly right. You don't have to just totally, like you say, put them in the compost bin, like I said, weed in the garden. Just move around, change that plant to someone else. People do it in gardening all the time. So show with the friends, you could just change them around, like you say, and put the other person, who would you like to emulate more? I did want to take just a minute to let you know, and I keep talking about that brag factor, having 5 steps. We won't go into all those today because we don't have time. But it's 5 steps with it. And the first step is behave as if, which you just talked about. Who would you like to be? See, you get me going on into another thing now. Behave as if, who would you like to be like? That's the first step of the brag factor. You don't have to come up, success leaves crumbs. Bragging and whatever you want to do in life leaves crumbs. So who would you like to be alike? And you just said it. Who put those people in there? Who would you emulate? And that's the first step that I say in the brag factor. Behave as if and act like that person you want to become. So in picking the friends that you said, who would you like to be alike? Put them in there. The second step is resist the urge to complain and quit. As we're trying to be successful in anything we do, it's easy to quit. When your friends told you change that trailer and you thought you had everything together, and it's so frustrating when you think you have everything together and you run to a friend and said, I got it now. And they like, man, no, put that in the trash. You got to start over. I mean, it's just terrible, but you have to resist the urge to quit and to complain. And what people don't see is they see you now as the top five podcaster, one of the top five podcasters. They didn't see you on the road getting there. And so there were times when you probably wanted to quit and resist some things and complain. And your people kept, every time you came back with them with something, they said, that's not it. And you had to go back. So resist the urge to quit. A is accept no limitation. And that's what you did in that example, how beautifully. You accepted no limitation. They told you this is what you needed, and that was the bar. You just raised the bar. And we talked about it earlier. The fourth step is grow your gift. And the fifth step is gratitude. And that's why I think that if you brag from a standpoint using a little gratitude, it makes it a little easier because now you're a top five podcaster. But guess what? All you got to do is add is how your material and your information has helped so many people. See how that adds a little gratitude to it.
Yeah. Well, and that's one that I really felt was super important in reading your book was like the importance of bringing other people into your bragging, where you're like, yeah, I never knew how hard this was going to be, but all of these people behind the scenes really lifted me up and really helped, or, all the people who've contributed to this project, And the
Right.
things they did, as we worked together really helps to like bring the entire statement together.
It brings that together because you can bring in right there how the other people helped you and that cohesiveness and what you were able to then have as a result of doing this, that, and the other. I have a bigger project now that's serving more people. You're right, and that's what gratitude is.
I think the other thing that was really important to cover in this, we had kind of talked about like you have your gift, your experience, your skills. What do you do when there is like an obvious gap? If you're like, hey, I don't have any leadership experience, but I really want this leadership role, how do you kind of try and bridge that divide?
Well, what you do then is you got to kind of look for some opportunities so that you can get that experience. When talking about gratitude, people don't realize that if you can volunteer in volunteer groups, join things like Rotary or work for Red Cross or work for Boys Club, Girls Club, whatever it is your niche, there's something for you. If you're a gardener, whatever you want to do, master gardening thing, whatever it is you like, you can go there and find out that you can do something there and do some leaderships and get in those groups together. But more importantly, when you're there, the people you're going to meet may be CEOs and other people that you could talk to them and maybe get an internship with them because you were volunteering. And people that volunteer usually have good morals and some good ethical values. So the fact that they saw you there volunteering, then you get to know them and you may be able to bridge that gap because they saw you taking leadership there. They may give you an internship, externship, whatever you want to call it, in their company and help you bridge the divide. But you can get a lot of good leadership opportunities with volunteer groups and help to get that experience. And that speaks volumes when you wrap it in your 30-second brag the right way. Because who doesn't want to hire a leader who says that on Saturdays, I coach baseball. On Saturdays, I'm working with the girls' club. On Friday night, I'm doing this with the what? Who wouldn't want to do that?
Well, and it really kind of paints all of life as a bit of a networking event where you're like, yeah, you want that job in gardening. Go join that local group. And by doing so, you meet people who are already influential in the space. Like, yes, you're gaining experience. Yes, you're doing a thing that's for you, but naturally, like these other people will come along and like just join your life as a part of it.
And they will join your life. And that's what happened. And they're going to broaden your life because you can't think about or dream about the things you don't know about. But when you meet those other people that and they share their experiences with you, no matter what space you're in, it's going to broaden your life. Because you see, medical school didn't tell me about exactly writing books and uh, on brag factor. You see what I'm saying? But going to other groups, I learned about those things. And so you have whatever your industry is, but as you go through life experiences and other things, it helps you to broaden your perspective.
Well, and I think that's something that holds a lot of people back. Like, in talking about just not giving up, I think the thing that's always kept me moving forward is I heard an extremely successful person say, just show up to the race. They're like, honestly, when you look at anything that's starting, 90% of people that want to do the thing you want to do just won't show up. They're like, so just show up. They're like, just getting started already puts you so far ahead of everyone. And I think a lot of people look at that the same way when they're like, oh, well, they're probably going to want someone with a degree for this job. And you're like, maybe, but if you apply and you have relevant experience, that degree might just be, oh, well, I see you're capable of learning in an institution versus like, oh, I see you've done this in the field. So you obviously know the basics.
Correct. And in my book, I give examples of how you can structure your 30-second brag when you don't have a degree because, everyone hadn't had the time or hadn't gone to, school to get a degree, but they have very valuable experience. So it has examples for people who don't have a degree, but they have valuable experience. And when you talk about what's holding you back, and I'm not here to talk about books, but I'm here to talk about information. I wrote a book about dreams without goals or nightmares. And in there, I want to tell the audience they can go to my website, The Bragg Factor, and download my toolkit. And that toolkit is going to speak to what you just spoke to, what's holding you back. Because I always say that there are four things that people need to think about when they are thinking about their goals. And I say goals equal W to the fourth power. What is it you really want? What is your time frame? But what's holding you back? And I bring that up because you brought up what's holding you back. When we look at our goals, one of the main things that keeps us from getting them is because we don't identify what's holding us back. It may be that you want to work on going and getting some training or volunteering, but the reason you can't do it is why? Every Saturday when I say I'm a volunteer and do this, or I'm gonna work on that certification, or I'm gonna take that training course, or I'm gonna do whatever it is you want to do, Jane or Bob comes by and gets me going in another direction. So Jane and Bob in that situation may be what's holding you back, and you have to be strong and say, Bob, now don't come by here on Saturday. I wanted to go coach and do whatever it is. So what's holding you back? It may be that you're thinking about going to the gym or on your diet. But what happens is you brought your lunch, and there's Jane who says, no, I'm ordering today. Won't you want to order out? So you got to think about what's holding you back in that situation. I have to tell Jane no in that situation. It takes courage to say no. But the work for reaching our goals is what I'm saying. There are four questions. What is it you want? What's the time frame? What's holding you back? And what's the strategy? A lot of times people worry about how I'm going to do things. But what I've learned in life and from talking to many successful people is that if you get clear on the why you want to do something and really get convicted on that, why it's important to you, you'll finish out you will learn the how. But what's holding you back, you got to think about what is that holding me back? And see, like you with that trailer, you wanted the podcast, and your friend said you were talking too much and doing that, whatever. That might have been holding you back from going from step one to step two. You worked on what's holding you back. But see, when you thought about what was holding you back, you figured out the strategy. And people spend so much time saying, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. There are things that I start and I say, I don't know how, but I know why I want to do it. And just with the networking of life that you mentioned, you will run into people at the barber shop, you'll run into people elsewhere and different things, and somebody can tell you the how when you get convicted on the why.
Well, and it really is like, I think a lot of this is fear. Like, people are afraid to do the things that are uncomfortable. They're like, I want to be confident and I want to have all these skills. And it's like, well, confidence and skills are born from discomfort. Like, you've got to be so uncomfortable and so far outside of where you're safe that you become confident because you're like, oh, well, now I know how to do that. So if somebody asks, hey, piano player left, can you play? You're like, yeah, I can play. Like,
You can
I
play.
took lessons. I was really bad in recitals. I can now play the piano in front of people. Like, I got confidence. I
You
can do
got
these things.
confidence. And that's what I say, like you said, really confidence comes from not operating in your comfort zone, but for going through your discomfort zone, that pain zone. So that's why I tell you I'm a pain doctor. All of this comes from physical pain, but life pain. All of it has synergy and similarities because that's painful. When you're outside your comfort zone, you're in that pain zone. But when we're in that pain zone, sometimes we view, oh, I never want this to happen again. And you don't want that pain to happen again. You want to avoid it. But if you take time to dissect, what did I learn when I was in that discomfort or painful zone? That can accelerate your growth. And in that discomfort zone, the experiences of life, that's when we learn. Because you know what? If you really want to create a good business or anything, you take away people's discomfort. The guy they said that created paychecks, didn't like going to the supermarket or whatever, getting his check cashed. And so he came up with a system paychecks and looked at it. How many companies have paychecks? So think about what's causing people discomfort. And it's that discomfort zone. If you work that discomfort zone, you're on to something.
Well, and that speaks to like reframing things, right? If it's an experience or it's a skill you have, You're like, well, I'm a hairstylist. Like, okay, well, reframe that. We talked about how much you deal with people. You now have great interpersonal skills if you just reframe the way you look at it. That's critical.
That is critical. And COVID taught us that because look, we had to reframe and rework and come up with different things. And in order to survive economically, people had to make pivot shifts. And it is about reframing things. And like you said, your barber, my hairstylist, any of them, those are great interpersonal skill. And also conflict resolution specialists is what they are.
Yeah, certainly.
They are conflict resolution specialists. So they could say, hey, I left being a hairstylist and a barber and became a mediator.
Well, and that was one that I really went through. Like, when I was younger, I was a paramedic and a firefighter, and I did that for a long time. And then I kind of transitioned to the business world. And they had asked me questions where they're like, well, do you have any leadership experience? And the thought in my head is like, I have more leadership experience than everyone in this room because I've been in life or death situations.
Right.
But I can't say that out loud. Like, you got to reframe that to be like constructive.
That's right. But right. And so you just play with the words on it. And well, in my years as a firefighter and paramedic, in those life and death situations, I found myself having to lead a team to help get these people to life-saving situations. And people will know then just when you say you were a paramedic or a firefighter and you did that for so many years, you took the lead on that. That's great leadership. And that's
Well,
so honorable, right?
and it's really like targeting your audience, right? Like a lot of this comes back to that, where you're like, look, they don't want to hear, your horror stories from the ER. Maybe
Right,
they do, but in their private time, not in the interview. Like in
right,
the
right.
interview, they want to hear how you gained really valuable skills.
And how you led a team. I worked in the ER and I led a team where we were able to decrease the wait time. I led a team and operationally we saved expenses in the ER, blah, 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 blah. Because every company wants to save expenses and they want to know that you led a team where we were able to reduce our turnover. So from that, you look at what are the key elements that any business would want and take it from your experience. But you're right. That's what they don't care about. Miss So-and-so was bleeding, and you did that. They want to know that you led that team and this is what happened.
Yeah.
And you can take those numbers and get the words that resonate and with the field you're thinking about.
Well, and that really brings back the importance of like having good, honest friends and practicing. Because, like, is it uncomfortable to get asked where you want to be in 10 years? Sure. You have to think a lot about the future. It might be a little uncomfortable. But if your friend asks you and you give a response and they say, that's really bad, don't say that. You're like, oh, good. Next time I'm in this kind of uncomfortable situation, I'll be less uncomfortable and I know what not to say.
You
So,
know
like,
what not to say.
you have the right directions to steer the boat, so to speak.
And that's exactly right. So ask a couple friends on it, and if they're saying the same thing, and don't get mad with them, and don't try to talk them into your way. If two people are telling you no, that's not working, then don't try to talk them into, oh, well, yeah, that people don't understand that. And so, yeah, and so then you'll get comfort in that.
Yeah,
Right.
because you could say, like, well, here's why my answer does work. And it's like, great, but you can't say what you just said to me in the interview. Like, you can't argue with your interviewer. Here's why what I said was perfect.
Right, right. And just go through the life like you said, the paramedic and the firefighter, and somewhere along there, you're going to see within those jobs some similar skills that you had that you can cluster together and make a list of those skills. Just get a list of the skills, the skills, the skills, the strengths, the strengths, the strengths, and make a list when you're looking at those jobs, circle them, highlight them, and say, now, what were the similar things? And get those words and then put them in a sentence and say them back to yourself, say them to a friend. And now with technology, you can take your iPhone or whatever kind of phone you have on that voice memo, and you can say that to yourself on the way to work, have it transcribed, read it, play it back, and see how that sounds to you. And then time it so that you get it within your 30, 40 seconds, your 30 seconds, so that it's timed. And then that's how you create it. And what I want people to know is you don't have just one 30-second brag. If I'm talking about something medical at a medical conference, I have a different 30-second brag than when I'm speaking about the brag factor or how to brag. If I'm talking about goals, I have a thing on goals and how I achieved my goals and that kind of thing. And all those things are authentic and true, but it's just like a restaurant doesn't offer one menu. You should have a bag of 30-second brags to fit the different situation that you're in because you may have certain skills, just like we talked about the hairstylist and the barber. We're looking at right now, those people can have a lot of the different jobs, couldn't they? And so you would want to have a 30-second brag that reads to what you said. What is the audience you're talking to? And all of it's true. You don't want to make up things. It's true. But when you dissect podcaster, firefighter, paramedic, and other things you did, you will see the leadership things will be glowing out of that. And you'll be able to create you some different 30-second brags. And so I say, have yourself a little appetizer, just like a menu, a little appetizer that you say, and you will see people like that. But then you need to have thought along for that second interview something a little longer that you need to talk about. Maybe, and that may be the main dish. But when you do that appetizer, that's going to stimulate questions for you, and that's going to help you be able to elaborate and go a little longer and give them a little bit more about you. But start with the 30 seconds. That's going to be the conversational teaser. And like you say, you don't want to be robotic. I did this and I'm a firefighter 30 years and where it sounds memorized. You'll be able to do it off the cuff. Get up in the morning, brush your teeth. You say it in the car. You got it. And what people get scared that, oh my God, I forgot to say something. Do you know what? Oh my God, the people didn't know what you were going to say, so you didn't forget anything. And that's the thing I find. People want to be critical of themselves and say, I forgot to say that main part. The people don't know that unless your eyes bulge and you open your mouth up, and then they're going to know. When I first became a doctor and we were learning how to palpate, touch people to feel for masses and tumors, I remember palpating a person's stomach and I felt a little something. You know, as a medical student, you want to feel something abnormal. So you know what abnormal feels like. We don't want people to be sick, but we want to feel something that you diagnosed a cancer today or something that's not normal because you've rehearsed it on all your classmates in their 20s and everything was normal. So when I felt this and I felt something like a tumor, my eyes bulged, my mouth, and I was scared. Oh God, this person probably has an awful cancer. I didn't say it, but my face said it. And the teacher said to me, do you know you just scared that person to death and all it was a fatty tumor? I said, I didn't say anything. He said, but they were looking at you and they saw your eyes and your facial expression that you were afraid and you made them afraid. So you had to learn that. And so it is when you're doing that 30-second brag. If you forget something, don't do like I did and open your mouth and your eyes bulging. Just keep your face together and keep joy in it and say excitement. Because when people see the passion in you talking about what you offer, they're going to feel that passion. But if you go there, I've been a plumber for 30 years and I think that I can lead your plumbing team because well, they don't want you. They want some excitement. So have some excitement when you do it and try to let your face and your words go in sync. Not like I did. Oh, yes, ma'am. You okay? And I'm looking scared to death.
Well, and that's part of this, like, it's never too late to grow. Even if you're in the field you love, like we used to have this all the time. We had EMT students that are like, I'm in paramedic school and I love it. And this is what I want to do forever. And I'm like, okay, you're terrible with patients. Your ability to communicate with people is truly awful, despite the fact that your diagnosis is spot on. Like your treatment's amazing, but your ability to talk to people is terrible. We would tell them to go get part-time jobs as baristas because we're like, you're going to have to talk to people all day and you'll learn how to sell something that they're like, wow, you really made that sound good. And it wasn't robotic at all, but you're like, that's the 600th time I've said it today.
Right,
I said it
right.
to every single person I've seen so far today, but I figured out how to say it that's memorized but not robotic at all.
That's right. That's right. You're right. And so they were diagnosis are spot on, but they were terrible talking to people. That's right.
Yeah. And that's just like, you can fix those. That's your volunteer opportunities. That's your getting to know other people kind of things. It's all stuff we can fix. And I think, your entire presentation really here on this interview has been wonderful explaining all of those things. I want to make sure people can find, your books and more about you if they're looking for more.
Thank you. I want people to leave and get two things. As I've talked about a lot of things, we talked about bragging, and I want you to think about those 4 strategies and the bragging buddy. And you can go to my website, thebraggfactor.com, get a free download of a chapter from that book, and you can find some of those tips. So that's thebraggfactor.com. And also on that same website, under resources, I have a toolkit when we talked about earlier today of things that are holding you back. It's going to give you those 4 questions that you need to talk about and think about when you're thinking about your goals. So you can find me there at thebraggfactor.com. And I also invite you to come to my YouTube, The Bragg Factor, again, The Bragg Factor. And I give Tuesday tips for a terrific Tuesday that you may find beneficial. And know that I won't be talking that long because my best friend told me, don't make them that long. So I learned from her. And so I look forward to helping you anybody that I can. I do coaching as well. I'm a certified high performance coach. And again, you can go to thebraggfactor.com and contact me at Dr. Bragg at thebraggfactor.com. And it's been my pleasure to be with you all today. And if anyone has any questions, just reach out to me on that website. And my books are on Amazon. And just look up Dr. Winifred Bragg.
Yes, excellent. And I will have links to all those things in the show notes. So if you want to go to the website, it'll be there. If you want to go to the YouTube, it'll be there. If you want to find the book on Amazon, it'll be there. Just literally scroll down on your screen or phone. It's super easy. And then click the link you want. And then, like I always say, whenever we have authors, and as a best-selling author, I'm sure you've heard this and say it quite a lot, reviews really matter. Leaving a good review for a book you genuinely found helpful is so important with the algorithms that we have today.
Appreciate that. So get that chapter and let me know what you think about it and any way I can help you.
Absolutely. Winifred, thank you so much for being here. I've appreciated your time immensely.
And thank you for having me, and good luck to you on your future podcasts.
So who wants to be my bragging buddy? I can't say it comes with a lot of perks, but I'll be your friend forever. Well, in other news, December is rolling on, Christmas is almost upon us, and the rankings are as follows. Number 1, the United States, with Oregon, California, and Texas in the lead. Number 2, England of the United Kingdom. Number 3, Australia, with Queensland in the lead, although this whole month has been a battle for supremacy in there. Number 4, Ghana. And number 5, Canada, just barely exacting revenge on New Zealand. That's it for this week. Have a great week, a great weekend, and I'll see you all back here next week for another new episode. Until that episode, please do all those things that help the show pretty please, like rating, reviewing, liking, and subscribing. Also remember you can reach out to dumbenoughpodcast@gmail.com or on any of the social medias if you want to reach me personally. But most importantly, stay dumb.